who are not current users of chemical-free foods. So,
Sorry, this is getting live streamed and not recorded. We are live on
Yeah.
YouTube somewhere. So I think we need to pause that.
This is our internal YouTube.
Okay,
so
great.
we recorded there because
Okay, great. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Ravi.
okay, so one more time. The objective is to increase consumer adoption or accelerate consumer adoption of the chemical-free foods category. Ergo, the appeal is obviously focused on people who don't use chemical-free foods, which is majority of the target audience. Okay, so that's hopefully clear enough. Our objective is to try and, based on experience, it's an example from green tea, that when you do advertise in the initial phases, you can double the growth and hopefully driven by household adoption. So our objective is to double the consumers who use chemical-free foods from whatever the baseline is, and the baseline we don't precisely know what it is, and that's the research of the pre and post attitudes and usage, which we'd like to run. So we understand the baseline, and 12 months later, we can gauge the effectiveness of marketing to the people who we want to convert. So does that answer that first question?
Yeah, I think this part is clear on who we are going to target. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now, in terms of claims, so there are 4 claims which we want to make. All 4 we want to go to doctors with. One claim on which we will run claim support in Pune, we envisage going directly to consumers. So there are 4 claims in all.
I think they have gone through it. So the pesticide claim is what Ravi is talking about, the urine pesticide. All the other 3 claims will be through doctors. Yeah.
Well, all 4 go through doctors, Sirish. And
Yes.
Okay.
And Ravi, just a clarification. The marketing campaign that we are running, that's running in Pune, or which are the other cities that are part of
No.
it?
The marketing campaign is not running yet.
Right.
The claim support will be done in Pune because the claims can be generated anywhere. The infrastructure of being able to do the claim support with an accredited lab who has field capability is in Pune. So we are going to, for reasons of logistics and ease, we are going to generate claim support in Pune. The claim support is going to be among 75 households, targeting to get at least 100 children within those, between the ages of 2 to 10. And the research design, which Lindsay has shared, you may have seen, is that we do a pre-measurement of urine output of these children. And while we are there, we'll also collect adult samples. And we may as well test them as well. But the focus is on the child. Eventually, we want to make the appeal more child-based. It's more emotive and will likely aid adoption. Okay. So the objective is run a pre in the labs, measure chemicals from pesticides in the urine output, measure a post. I think the research design calls for replacing, and we will give them chemical-free foods for 14 days. And we will measure urine output on a certain frequency. And Lindsay believes, and we will get it from the claim support data based on all the science which she has, is that actually within a dramatic 3 days, the foods which we place, which is chemical free, will clean out the measurable chemical content in the child's urine. Okay, now we'll see, it may take, whether it takes 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, she's going to measure at different intervals. So we will have the data available to us. And the claim, therefore, which we are looking for goes something like this. It would say, did you know that conventionally grown pesticides in conventionally grown foods make their way into the human body? This can be measured in your child's urine output. And did you know that pesticides have a negative or detrimental impact on child's brain development? Switch to chemical-free foods, and within 3 days, you can see or measure a significant drop in chemicals in your baby's urine. Okay, so that's the overall idea. So set up the issue, support it with hard measurable data pre and post, and appeal to children, particularly around brain development. Okay, this has pedigree. So we've done an analogous work in the baby diaper category, where we have talked about, did you know that lack of sleep of the baby hampers baby's brain development? And when you switch to diapers, your baby sleeps more peacefully longer during the night. And I just received data from P&G literally just now that baby diaper penetration, category penetration, has gone from virtually nothing. In about 15 years, they've gone to in urban India, 88% diaper penetration now. Okay, about half being full-time. Incidentally, they also sent me numbers on feminine hygiene, and which is why it makes sense to go for the child. Even if we generate data on adults, feminine hygiene, when I launched Whisper in India in 1995, urban India usage of ready-made feminine hygiene products was 15%, and today it's still only 53%. Okay, so obviously it's much, when the baby's well-being is involved or the child's well-being is involved, there is a lot faster adoption than when the mother's is involved. That doesn't mean we shouldn't appeal to mothers. And therefore, one claim is again regarding the child's well-being when she's pregnant. But it appeals for the mother's well-being, for her to eat chemical-free foods at the trigger point when she's pregnant because of the child's well-being involved. There's another which is about sperm count, and another which is potentially a good consumer claim if we have funding, but it takes longer. In 6 months, we could measurably show reduction in risk of diabetes as measured through blood sugar levels among consumers who are predisposed to diabetes. So those are the claims, right? And hopefully that answers that question. Now, as of now, and we are, Sirish has requested that we potentially look at Gujarat as a learning area. And I'll come to you since Apurva, you've been in the world of media. There are some constraints which we need to be aware of. But right now, the plan which we have pulled together is from a media isolation standpoint, the most efficient. And that is isolating in Karnataka. And that allows the Karnataka and the southern states and West Bengal, you can isolate media, which means basically you buy local media and top up with whatever is called OTT, streaming, YouTube, Facebook, etc., etc. And so the objective is to run this test market or learning market rather than test market, frankly, in Karnataka. He's asked us to look at Gujarat. I doubt, so the media agency is trying to work that through, but I doubt we can do that without a national stream because the spillover is very high in these and ability to isolate in Gujarat is very little. But we'll know what it costs. And then the pre and post research, obviously, since we want to run whichever geography we choose, that one state, we would run the pre and post research in there. So we know the baseline and we know where it gets to eventually. All right. So that's the thinking.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Chaturvedi. I think this was great context for us. If I can ask a few questions on the campaign and like how you and the rest of the team have envisioned the campaign. So if one were to take the example of we are doing the campaign in Karnataka for the reasons that you've stated, are we looking at a 360-degree campaign? Is that the idea that
Sure.
That we'll be running print ads and TV commercials and using all media, billboards, etc. as well?
No, not billboards.
Okay.
I have very little faith in billboards.
Okay.
They are a good awareness medium. They are not a good conversion medium. Have never been.
Sure.
And so I have zero faith in that. Beyond that, it will be a multimedia campaign. So, you can get a media agency involved. I've been, on a pro bono basis, Lodestar has been helping us just put together a pro forma plan.
Right.
And they've come up with a pro forma plan based on another company, which I advise, who happened to be going into a learning market in Karnataka. So we've actually got a real plan for them. I've taken basically that plan and say, well, if this plan would be replicated, here's what it would be costing. Now they have a mix of 60 and 30. I don't see the need for a 60 ever for us. That's 60 seconds of audiovisual advertising. Okay.
Sure.
And besides that, it's top ups. It could, typically in most cases, you've been in this world, so you probably understand that reach objectives still cannot be met with just online.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, so we have to be in mainstream television, and Kannada programming gives us enough reach to be able to do that. And yes, then you have that as the primary vehicle. You have streaming platforms. You have a digital campaign. add-on to the core television-based campaign.
Right.
And so that's how I envisage it.
Right. And a follow-up question to this was that, what is the banner under which we'll be doing this campaign? Like, for example, it's when you advertise P&G products, the brand and the company behind it.
Yeah.
So when we are doing this public awareness campaign,
so this would be, there are various examples, Apurva. In India, the most well-known of that is the National Egg Coordination Committee.
Right. Of course.
So it would be under the aegis or banner, so far as I know, for now, is NCNF, National Coalition of Natural Farmers.
Okay.
Right. And there are other, in the US, we've got the Got Milk campaign, which milk manufacturers do. And it's an industry-based campaign. Similarly, the pork manufacturers are running a campaign which is called the Other White Meat.
Absolutely.
And so these are industry associations, and they run it as an industry associations. There are other examples. There's the Cotton Council, there's the Gold Council, there is what else is there? Woolite, the wool people. So there are many people who do industry-based campaigns to just drive the whole category, and deliberately, and that is our thinking, we don't advertise brands within the category. Our objective is to raise the tide and have all boats rise with the tide, and it's their business on who gets how much of the bigger share of the pie.
Right. And in terms of sequencing, just for the sake of clarity, my understanding is that first the effort in Pune will happen, and there'll be a pre and post of that. And once those findings are out, and we have got some data, using that data, the campaign will be envisaged. So all likelihood,
go ahead, finish your question.
So my question is like, will the actual campaign in all likelihood happen next year?
Yeah, next year, which means 2023 in calendar year or financial?
Calendar year.
No, I don't believe it should take that much time, because fortunately for us, the urine study, which is the only one where we are doing claim support, I want to emphasize again, it's the only one claim right now that we want to run claim support. And just so everyone is clear on the terminology, it is not consumer research, it is claim support research, which means we are running a study to support our claims. Okay. So that is a fairly quick, because it takes such little time to wash away the chemicals once you switch. So the study itself will be completed within 2 to 3 weeks. There are some approvals required, which require a month and a half. There is something called an ethics committee approval, which needs to be gotten. And that's the longest lead time. Apparently, it takes a month and a half. So if you add it all up, 3 weeks, 1.5, if we gave the go-ahead today or whenever, right? And then data analysis and pulling it together. So call it, let's say it takes about 3 months' time to have our ducks in a row on the claim support. The moment we have that, and in that period of time, we could run, once we decide which state we are going into, then we could run the pre-post research, which we envisage during the same time. So call it in 3 months' time, you could appoint an agency and have them create the creatives and start running the campaign. So if we had funding tomorrow, in 6 months' time, you could be on air potentially.
Right. Of course. Yeah. And perhaps this may be a question to the wider group. Will we be picking up certain cities for the pre and post campaign evaluation? Because I think
the thinking was Bangalore and Mysore.
Right.
Yeah, original design is Bangalore or Mysore, but or it could be Ahmedabad. We have to, like the banner, the involvement, there are certain things to be decided, but it'll be one city.
Right.
Not like the whole world, so that we can do a pointed pre and post. Because the purpose of this is to study, learn, and hopefully prove to the various NCNF members that, guys, if you advertise or communicate, you will get a larger market at a price. And there's a segment in the society which is willing to buy if it is conveyed to them that it is beneficial to them.
And do we have a sense of the budget that we are hoping to,
you saw the PPT, right? All the budget numbers are there in the PPT.
Okay, I may have missed it.
Yeah. It's around 5 crores.
So the total, including doctors, claim support, creative production, and 12-month media plan, is about 5 crores.
Right. Okay.
And the other thing we envisage, just let me complete this piece, and then I can
please.
answer a question, is that once we have a state decided, then we could talk to some of the modern trade in those. So, for example, I was thinking Metro as an example or we could do other, retailers, where we would go and talk to them on making chemical-free foods on what they call a destination category. And what they do is once they declare, retailers declare certain categories internally as what they call a destination category. It means that they will promote it by giving prominence of shelving, giving prominence of displays, and prominence in their promotion activity. And that, when the promotion activity of retailers is mostly in price offs of a certain amount. And so in those retailers, if we can get this category to become a destination category, it gets an additional push in terms of displays, shelving, and pricing.
Right. Well, I think we've got great clarity. I think it gives us clarity. I think first is on the scale of it, because I think that was the first question we had of, how are we going to run with this, and how are we going to are we putting enough buck behind the media that people are able to consume the message and then shift attitudes. But I think the scale is fairly clear.
And I think on the media, you talk the money, but it's basically, again, you're being a media, communications person, so it's easy for you to understand. We're looking at 60 to 65 reach with a 4+ frequency.
Right. I think one feedback I had on the questionnaire, or the draft questionnaire that I saw, in terms of the pre and post impact, I feel that questionnaire will only make sense once once the campaign is being envisioned, right? Because you want to see whether what was carried as the core messages in the campaign and the way you had the characters, etc., whether are people receiving it. So I think it might be a better idea that, we are drafting that pre-questionnaire once we have moved a certain level forward, and perhaps, the pre-questionnaire might be easier to design once we have some more clarity. but the post questionnaire should definitely reflect some of the highlights of the campaign significantly for us to know whether it's worked or not. As in, that's my overall comment on it at this point, because I think otherwise deciding on something right now wouldn't be as effective in capturing the impact of the effort that's gone in.
Yeah, so that's fair on the post. On the pre, remember, what we are trying to do is simply understand of, and you can work directly with Alex, who's on the call. She's leading the effort, and she works with Lindsay. And so you can work directly with her. But the objective is simply establish a baseline, which means how many percent households actually use chemical-free foods? Do they understand the meaning of chemical-free foods? Do they, if they are aware of them, do they know its benefits? If they're aware of its benefits, why don't they use it? It's fairly simple because it establishes a baseline. And then you're correct when, 12 months out or 6 months out, 6 and 12 months out, when we are looking for it, some parts remain standard. You obviously want the usage dimensions to be the same, so you can read if it was like 2% of people using in these kind of households, how much have moved in 6 months' time and a year's time. And then add, precisely as you are saying, questions based on the campaign which we've been running with much more precision.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think for the purpose of getting ethics approval as well, because we're trying to get both phases, the claim support and the pre-post survey, approved together. Lindsay was pointing out that typically you can submit a survey and then bring in another round of review when we have amendments. So I think if we can kind of come together and agree on an initial survey, definitely the pre, and then sort of a template for the post as well, and get that approved, then we can make amendments and make it more specific once we have more clarity on the campaign.
Yeah, Alexander, I think on the copy that was shared, which was related to the campaign impact, and I think we had mentioned, the document said that we are looking at a telephonic survey, which would ideally take 15 to 20 minutes. And we had quite a few questions in it. I think we may have to really bring it down by, 40 to 50% or even lower. And I think Apoorv and the research team might have a better view, because, we do a lot of surveys at CW as well. So we can give you a sense of, in India, how much time it would take. I think we'll have to look at a fairly shorter version of the current draft.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And I sent back some feedback, but I think I just sent it to Apoorv, so I can send it to all of you. One question I did have, though, for the broader team is, initially when we were talking through the survey draft, you had mentioned that you wanted to have some sort of free-form answers about like all the different types of terminology, so organic, chemical-free, pesticide management. And I think in terms of cutting down the survey to a reasonable length, some of those more open-ended free-form questions will probably take quite a bit of time over the phone. So we were thinking we could send around another version of the draft, but that perhaps we could just have an open-ended question on the chemical-free terminology, and for the other alternative terminologies, that could be done through like a more qualitative, in-depth interview with a subset of consumers to get into some of the details of that, rather than having it in this mass survey, because that will add quite a bit of time.
Have you, Alexander, have you said how many people you want to do survey for telephone and qualitative? Any numbers you had?
Yeah, so we were aiming for 300 to be included, so 400, and then assuming that we might lose some along the way, aiming to have 300 included at the end. So
at the telephonic level, and qualitative?
Yeah, it's a survey. At the moment, it's about like 70 questions or something, but I do agree with Mihir that we need to cut that down a bit.
I think Shirish, there was no qualitative element.
No, she said just now that we will do a deeper qualitative survey, right?
So yeah, I think our initial plan in the ethics approval document was to have this survey, so the more kind of quantitative mass survey, and then to do a subset of more qualitative in-depth interviews to unpack some of the drivers a bit more. But for the purpose of the telephone survey, I think probably having big open-ended questions doesn't make as much
No,
sense.
I understand. I'm saying what I'm asking is, if the telephone is 300, how many numbers we had envisioned for the so-called qualitative survey?
Oh, right. Sorry. I don't think we had specified any in the ethical approval documentation. But yeah, I can talk to Lindsay and see if she has an idea on that, or I don't know if Mihir and Approver, if you have any thoughts on how many would be necessary.
So Alex, in terms of qualitative, first, one thought: never run focus groups. They are an absolute utter waste of time. Okay, it's the world's worst designed research, and politicians love it. So don't do focus groups. If you really want qualitatives, you really don't need more than 25 to 30 in-depth interviews, which means really having to sit in their homes and talk to them in their homes. It may take an hour to 2 hours talking to them about, and it's much more attitudinal, and it's much more about mindset. It isn't about any quantitative numbers. So typically we looked at these as what we called as developmental research. It's really understanding the consumer mindset, and a lot of insights come out of it. So you really don't even need more than 25 or 30 of these at most. Don't do focus groups, do in-home, in-depth conversations with people, where the objective is really to understand their mindset. Why? It's the attitudinal questions. It's the why, not the what.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'll clarify that in our ethical approval documentation. So yeah, to have
Alex,
both pre and post of the quantitative survey and the qualitative in-depth interviews. Is that correct? So you'd have a pre-interview batch and a post.
well, you really don't need the post in qualitative terms, because the post survey is going to be really quantitative, because it's an evaluation of the effectiveness of our effort. So that's quantity. What you're trying to do, and in fact, if you do it before our campaign is done, so sooner the better, the qualitative aspect is we learn from the consumers certain insights. We think we know the barriers and it's all about pricing. There may be something else. We don't know that. So when you're going there, if we could really understand the consumer headset and their, what they think and what their attitudes are and why don't they adopt, because these are not income constrained consumers. Why don't they see the value, right? And that'll actually help us in the campaign development.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Sirish, I was going to ask, based, Punky's been texting, as you see, he has a good question.
Yeah.
So Alex, why do we need ethics approval for consumer research? I can understand the one for the lab testing because it's quasi-medical testing, particularly among children. So I understand that. What I don't understand is, why do we need an ethics approval for conducting consumer research? I've never gotten an ethics approval ever, or needed to.
Okay. I mean, from a university practice perspective, we're required to submit ethical approval for any form of research, even if it's qualitative consumer research.
Okay, so it's a university requirement.
Yeah, it's a university requirement. But I'm not sure in terms of the Indian context.
But the budget which Lindsay gave last time talks about ethics approval for the urine lab study. It is not talking about the consumer research study.
No, I think they wanted to submit.
It includes both. It's a two-phase approval. So the approval process would happen at once, but it would cover both phase 1 and 2.
No, phase 1 is still doing a study, right? Which is a testing urine and all that. And phase 2 is running the campaign. So there is no phase of consumer research in
So
the ethics part.
maybe I worded that wrong, but the approval would be covering both the urine collection study and
Correct.
the pre-post consumer survey, at least the way we've drafted it currently, so that it's all in one price tag rather than having two separate ethical approvals, which would cost the same for each of them.
Okay, so I think what they are saying is in India it may not be required, but I mean,
The university requires it, and there is no additional cost of getting it, is what I get from
Yeah.
Alex.
yeah.
So that's fine.
To my knowledge,
Yeah.
I'll double check with Lindsay, but I'm pretty sure the 3,600 figure for the ethical approval would be for the whole, for both of those things packaged together in one.
The only thing, Ravi, is that we cannot we cannot do a qualitative study on its own unless we get the whole ethics approval. So from a time perspective, it is married together.
Yeah.
So
And one more question, Alex. Did you say the cost is $3,600 for the ethics approval?
US
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah. Okay. And so, is there a way of in any way to reduce the time and cost? Because there was also a time factor which was a few weeks. I don't remember exactly how many weeks for the ethics.
Month and a
approval.
half. 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it can take
so-
up to a month and a half.
So does that is that like a standard fee, or is that something that can be, is there a possibility of reducing that, because the figure is not insignificant,
Hmm.
both
So
time
that's
and cost.
That's
Yeah.
the quotation that Ross Life Sciences provided from the ethics committee that they've used before. But I'm not sure whether, for example, if we were to take out the pre-post survey, if that would change the price. I don't believe it would. I think it's a fixed fee, but I can check back in with them. But yes, what they said, up to 1.5 months is how much time it can take. And I think Ross Life Sciences doesn't really have control over that, because that's the ethics committee, which is separate from them.
So Pankaj, this was quoted by Ross Life Sciences in their overall proposal, which includes the food costs and everything. Do you have
Yeah.
access? You have access to that?
I do. So I
Okay.
still, there was this question in my mind that basically what is the need for the ethics approval? And I was just trying to get clarity on that. Because I've also not come across, this type of a protocol in any of the work that has been, I've been associated in the past. So I was just trying to get a better understanding, because that's additional time and cost. So is it something that is absolutely necessary? It looks like it is, because it's a university requirement, in which case, is there any way to reduce time and cost? So that was the
Yeah.
next
Yeah, I
question.
think for the medical component of it, so the urine sample collection, that would need to have
That you
ethical-
absolutely. But Pankaj,
Yeah.
anything which goes medical or quasi-medical, you do need an ethics
Okay, so
approval.
yeah, for the medical part, I can understand. Yeah, so so maybe
So
the
what she's
consumer
saying
part
is
is
that what she's saying
okay.
is that in the same approval we'll have this also, and the same committee will do it. So it's a package thing. So it's
Yeah.
not a separately costed thing.
Yeah, except
Yeah,
Shirish, I would also say, even if it is not increasing cost, it may
Correct.
increase time if the committee is going to look at the consumer research part, and because they will be spending time doing that. So why don't we stick to what's the necessary part, which is the medical
Yeah.
part?
Right.
And the other thing is, we have other people with other skills in this group who
Yeah.
know how to vet and, the process and design and stuff like that. I don't think we need further, time and cost spent on
Yeah,
that.
I think we can do this conversation with Lindsay directly, because she may be better aware, because Alexandra may not be aware of the why and why and what of it, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, I
We
think it'd be
can
helpful to have
write
Lindsay.
to Lindsay specifically, and she can respond on that. But Alexandra, you can convey to Lindsay that we will be able to start once the donor is fixed. So as of now, it is not that the donor is waiting for us. So we are
Okay.
looking for donors, all right? So it is not something that is going to start in a week's time or something like that.
Okay. Lindsay was saying we were wondering if maybe it's a possibility for the for Ross Life Sciences to, for example, front the cost of it. But I think in order to do that, they'd need to have the purchase order. So we're not sure if that's something that they would be willing to
No,
do.
I,
But
I would
even
not,
to
I
have that
would not, I
conversation.
would not venture into that unless we get some level of the comfort from the donor.
Okay. And do you have an
That's a-
estimate of when we would have that?
No, we can't
initial
say
commitment?
that because we are just talking to 3-4 people. So as of now, we have
Okay.
not had a breakthrough as of now.
Okay.
To the CEW team, my suggestion was that if you have done a similar kind of study, is it possible for you to send us a case study or something so we get a understanding of what you have done? I mean, it doesn't have to be under the banner of CEW. It can be Mihir's study earlier or something like that. So that will be nice for any commodity or whatever.
So in SFS team, we haven't done a similar study. I'll then let Meher respond in your experience at CW and earlier.
So Shirishi, we've at CW, I've been here for a while. I don't think we've done a campaign evaluation as such, but are you referring to other studies as well where we've conducted a survey?
No. I'm talking about a campaign evaluation, which is what you want to do, right? So
No. So I don't think we've done outrightly a campaign evaluation study earlier.
Okay. And in your career also beyond CEW, have you had experience of that?
No. I haven't done a campaign evaluation study earlier. At CEW, what we've done is we've like assessed government impact of government schemes, and we've assessed a lot of other impacts. But an out and out communications or a media campaign, that's not something that we've done.
Yeah, Sirish, I wouldn't worry about that. They are fairly standard. You know,
okay.
A research agency who we would work, who we could go and get this vetted. And I know people who will do that for us.
Right.
They have fairly standard ways of evaluating these. This is not rocket science.
Right. Of course, many companies must be already doing it for their campaigns. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions or comments or something?
Just one other thing. I don't know whether it was already circulated and I have missed it, but would there be some brief credentials of CW which you could be circulated to this group?
Yeah, of course. I think we'll send you a few things. Yep. If you'd like, we can give you a quick 2-3 minute backgrounder as well, if that's preferred.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just start off. We are an independent, not-for-profit policy research organization based out of New Delhi, where our headquarters is. We are chaired, like on our board right now. We have Mr. Jamshed Godrej, Mr. Montek Singh Aluwale, Dr. Naushad Forbes from Forbes Marshall, Mr. S. Ramudrai, who was earlier with TCS, National Skill Development Council, etc. We've got Dr. Anil Kakodkar, the atomic scientist, etc. Yeah, so we've got these are some of the, we've got Dr. Janmay Jay Sinha from BCG India as well. Currently, the team is led by Dr. Arnaba Ghosh. We are an 11-year-old organization. As the name suggests, it's the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. So we do research on a range of sustainability issues. Some of our focus areas include renewable energy, energy access, low carbon pathways, air pollution, sustainable food systems, etc. Our primary target audience are policymakers. Out of a team of 130 to 140 that we are right now, I would say around 110 are hardcore researchers. We have researchers from several disciplines. We focus on interdisciplinary research. Our core idea is that we pride ourselves on asking the right research questions, having a robust research methodology, and then putting our findings out for consumption, primary for policymakers. All our research is in public domain, and I'd like to emphasize that independence is fairly important for us. By independence, we mean that we are not affiliated with any government, political party, company, or anyone else. Like a lot of think tanks are affiliated with one or the other, but we are amongst those that are completely independent. We have complete editorial independence of all that we put out. And one way in which we maintain our independence is kind of separating our funder from the client. So most of our funding comes from foundations like IKEA Foundation, Gates Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, Good Energies, etc. That's like 80 to 85% of the funding comes from there. And the idea is most of the research that we produce, we hope that we use the findings to then work closely with bureaucrats and politicians to help them understand how some of the policies could be shaped better. So that's a brief of the organization, and sustainable food systems is an area where we've scaled up our work over the last 18 odd months, and Apurva is leading our SFS team.
And I think the website is CEW, right?
CEW.in. Yeah, so we'll circulate some of the impact we've had, etc., along with some of the research pieces that we've done. And I would say, we've in 2021, I think some of the highlight pieces were, one is we worked very closely with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy to help them on the National Hydrogen Mission. It's something on the policy for the National Hydrogen Mission. So I think it's something that is going to be announced fairly soon, but that's something that we've done. We've also, we came up with extensive analysis on the net zero thing. So net zero was one of the biggest announcements that India made at COP26 that happened in Glasgow in November. And I would say we were one of the very few institutions that did rigorous analysis on different pathways for India to achieve net zero. So we had some very interesting pieces of research that came out last March and then in October. And we worked fairly closely with a lot of stakeholders in India, including the government, to ensure that some of our independent analysis went as briefing notes for the government, for them to then decide, what is the kind of decarbonization pathway that India wants to adopt.
Just on that list, one addition that I would want to make is that we have been actually engaging with National Coalition on Natural Farming also fairly. And you may be aware that we are working with Rajasthan government, where they are trying to come up with their sustainable agriculture policy, really focused on natural farming. And they are going to actually, they're considering introducing natural farming, a dedicated budget and team and program around that. So where CW has been engaged by the government of Rajasthan, where we have engaged the NCNF to help us engage with the stakeholders on the ground who are driving natural farming. And yeah, so today we also received a good news. So there is a nod for, I won't say, let me not share all the good news unless this becomes public. But yeah, so there is a nod for a multi-crore budget at internal level. So I think the news would come out soon via NCNF channels also, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Mihir and Apurva, for that introduction.
Great.
Perfect. Then it's I think all done from our side. So no more questions, I think. And thanks a lot for all the questions, all the clarifications that you provided patiently, Raviji and others. Thank you. But back to you.
All right, so I think we can close the meeting for today, and Priya, we will take it forward afterwards. We have other things to do, as we have said, about going to different donors and all that. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Okay, and Lindsay, I think Pankaj, if you can write to us separately about this business of approval, I think it will be useful.
Okay,
Alex has got the questions. Maybe she can.
So she can talk to Lindsay, and if Lindsay could write to Pankaj or Ravi or both of them, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Or
just,
absolutely.
drawing attention to this issue so that in the
Yeah.
interest of, less time being spent, even if it doesn't involve more cost, but, quicker approval of ethics.
And more than time, I think delinking. For example, if you say that let us do qualitative stuff first, correct? Now, if this university requirement is there, we cannot do that unless we take the entire thing ethics approval, for example, right?
Yeah,
So that is a bigger issue more than the other things, So
that's right.
yeah.
Then you have to wait for a month and a half to get
Correct,
that.
correct,
Yeah. So
correct,
otherwise
correct.
we can move forward earlier. Absolutely.
Yeah. All
Yeah, I'll check with Lindsay and get back to you all.
right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
thanks
Bye.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.